Reclaimed is the podcast about the woman's journey of reclaiming her power through somatic work, breath work, plant medicine, and conversations. I am Kyla Gagnon, and this is Reclaimed. Hi, sweet friends. Welcome back to the conversation. I have Eileen March with me today. Eileen and I are in a mastermind together. We've been in this mastermind together for a couple of years, and I just really enjoy time with Eileen. So having her on was really a treat. What you'll notice if you're watching this is my camera wasn't working. We were having a really funny tech day. And if you're listening, then it's kind of irrelevant. But if you're watching the video, you just get to look at Eileen, and that's not a bad thing. Yeah, Eileen is a spiritual life coach, a wild medicine energy healer, and a slow living witch. Founder of My Luminous Life, she is passionate about empowering women to reconnect with their intuition, reclaim their power, you know how I feel about this, and come home to their bodies and to the earth. She works both in intimate one-to-one containers, blending intuitive coaching with her unique style of energy healing, as well as in women's ceremonies celebrating the turning of the wheel of the year. Eileen is also the host of the Woo Curious podcast. When she's not working, you can find her in her garden or curled up with a cup of tea reading a really good book or exploring the world with her partner. I hope you enjoy this conversation. I trust that you will. And I will see you on the other side. Enjoy, Eileen. Oh. Hi. My sweet friend. How are you doing?
So well. I'm so happy to be here. How are you?
I'm good. I mean, you and I are just, before we hit record, talking about how my laptop is potentially about to take its last breath. So I'm also a little bit like holding my breath. Prior to that, though, I was just at the nail spa and had my toes and my fingers done. So pretty relaxed. Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
It's always a nice way to spend an afternoon.
It is. Yeah. You really, when it's in the middle of the week, I have these moments where it's like, oh, what a gift to work for yourself. What a sweet gift to be able to choose to come to the nail salon on a Wednesday afternoon. Yeah. Grateful for that. Actually, on that note, I don't usually start like this, but I would love to know what you're grateful for right now.
I'm so grateful for the community of other female entrepreneurs around me, from you and the lovely women in our accountability group to the whole My Aligned Purpose community, and even into the Thought Leader Academy. I just feel like it's like that feminine remembering of the feminine power and wisdom and the collective sisterhood that just feels so present in my life these days, and I'm so grateful for it.
Thank you. I second that. Yeah. That almost leads into, well, it does totally lead into something I want to talk to you about in this conversation. But before we get into that, I also would like to know, what are you currently reclaiming?
Ooh, that's a great question. I am reclaiming my relationship with my body and in movement. Yeah. It's been a lot of years since COVID happened and it shut down my yoga studio, since I've had a regular movement practice. And recently I've joined a gym, like a small group Ladies Who Lift program, and it feels so good. Yeah. I've hated gyms my whole life, and this is just like, oh no, they're not all terrible.
Yeah. Well, similar to your gratitude, when you find the right group of people or the right space, everything changes. It's even like yoga. I used to teach yoga, and I remember, well, I still remember because it happens still. You'll ask someone, oh, do you practice yoga? No, I tried it once. I don't like yoga. Well, what style? Who was your teacher? Did you there's so many factors.
Right. Which is
Yeah,
why I didn't go back after
right.
COVID, because my studio and my teacher didn't start up again. And I was like, well,
Right.
if Kevin's not teaching yoga, then I guess I don't do
Then
yoga.
I don't practice
I
anymore.
don't practice. Yeah.
Kevin or bust.
Yeah, it pretty much is. I followed him around the city for a long time. And yeah.
So sweet. I love
Yeah.
that. Okay, let's get into our convo because I know that we are, we've got things to do and places to be, and we're really getting this in today in a sneaky way. So there, I mean, I've seen some of your journey into this like title of being a witch. And
Mhm.
I think I was there on the call where there was this like, it was like a light bulb went off, something happened. It was like you got shook by lightning. And there was this like all of a sudden owning this title. So can we go in a little bit, even like, take us as far back as you want to go, but coming into the really confident claiming of that title. So, how did you
Yeah.
get there? And then what does that actually mean to you? Because I think well, I know it means something different to a lot of people, and Hollywood and society has made it out to be something that it's definitely not. So, can we just uncover that a little bit?
I would love to.
Okay.
Yeah, it was actually it all started with the My Aligned Purpose retreat 2 years ago, or last year, not the one that we just had, the year before, when I was out walking between sessions, and a masterclass title landed in my head from out of nowhere called Light Witchcraft for the Woo Curious. And
Yeah.
it felt so fun, and I loved it. I shared it with everybody there, and everyone's like, I'm going to come to that masterclass. And then I got home and I shared this idea with my one-on-one coach who I had just started working with.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me and she was like, well, would you consider yourself a witch? And I was like, I don't know. Would I? Oh, that's not something that I've like consciously thought about. Like, I had a broom hanging in my kitchen for a long time, and I'd been a midwife at this point for 6 years. So like there was
Uh-huh.
signs. There was definitely
All
signs.
signs point to yes,
All signs
absolutely.
point to yes. But I just hadn't consciously been like, oh, and so she's like, how would you feel about calling yourself that and claiming it? And I had this like nervous excitement there. And so I hopped onto my Instagram stories and I put up a poll. I can't remember if the poll came first or if the question, what does the title witch mean to you? I think that was first.
I
And
think
I
so.
actually remember you specifically answering that poll and saying things like, wise woman, a woman who's in touch with her body and the earth, a caretaker, all of these beautiful pieces that weren't just, green skin and a big black pointy hat, which is what Hollywood gives us.
Yep.
And when I threw up the poll after that asking my followers, would you be surprised if I started calling myself a witch? The answer was resoundingly like, pretty much you don't already? I thought you did. So
That's so good.
yeah, so I actually just celebrated my witchiversary, as I'm calling it, on June 8th. And
Happy anniversary.
thank you. It's a fun thing to celebrate for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And really for me, the term is a reclamation of
Mm-hmm.
the divine feminine power that lives in us, the
Mm-hmm.
wisdom that's in our bones. A witch
Mm-hmm.
is a caretaker. She's a wise woman. She's a knowledge keeper. She's a healer and a nurturer and a holder of space in the community and a community hub as well, somewhere that people go to connect together and for counsel and safety. And it's really all of those divine feminine qualities that for so long our society has discredited or downright shat upon, basically,
Yeah.
for for lack of
Yeah.
a more eloquent term. And
Yeah.
so it's stepping into and owning all of that again.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting as you were speaking, I was thinking, I was like, it's this like rebellious act that we're doing as women and actually just humans. And you might have a story on this, but I'm not sure I believe that witches are just women either.
No, they're not.
Yeah. And so it's this like rebellious act of us coming back into that connection, which as I say that, it's like, oh, that's almost a bit scary because it was also, if we're going like way back in time, rebellious and really, really dangerous. And so it's this like, do we feel safe to be claiming this?
Mm-hmm.
Which, I think comes down to kind of what you're talking about, like that connection to self, that knowing, that like sense of anchoring into who you are so that you can really claim that with like authority and
Yeah.
pride.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, I mean, the witch wound is real, and
Mm-hmm.
it affects all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, people in female bodies in this lifetime feel the
Mm-hmm.
effects more, but it's there. The witchcraft is not feminine. It's simply a more connection to the balance, really.
Yeah.
It's not about, I think this gets misconstrued often with feminism and with just this idea of, the divine feminine rising, and the patriarchy pushes back by saying, well, you can't have like the feminine take over the masculine, and that's not what it's about. It's
Mm-hmm.
reclaiming and rediscovering and redefining a balance between the two. And they're
Mm-hmm.
not sexual binaries. They're really just
Yeah.
energetic, two ends of an energetic spectrum that exist in all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. The patriarchy. Dun, dun,
Our dear
dun.
friend Ellie has a hashtag for that.
I was just thinking that I almost need, like, how you can, well, maybe you've seen this on your phone where you can make stickers out of your pictures. Have you seen that?
I haven't played with it, but I've seen other people
Okay.
do it.
I just had this visual of like a sticker of Ellie like popping into the podcast, being like ding, with like a boing, boing, boing sound and popping back
Hashtag
out.
FTP.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure I could pay someone to do that. That's not my wheelhouse, but I'll leave it for another conversation. So,
Yeah.
can we talk a little bit about, I'm curious, and I don't know, I don't think I really actually don't think I know this about you, but what was your personal journey with your intuition? Because I know how connected you are now. Have you always been really in tune with and maybe that's twofold, with spirit and intuition, because I feel like if you have one, I feel like you often have the other because there's
Yeah.
such a deep sense of trust. What has your journey been with that?
I definitely have not always had a connection. I mean, I think as most children do, I was connected,
Mm-hmm.
and as a young person
Mm-hmm.
who we live in our bodies and our intuition so much more easily until the world gets a hold of our brains and tells us how we should think and move.
Mm-hmm.
I I was an atheist for a lot of my teen years and into and through most of my 20s, actually. I think I finally started acknowledging that perhaps I believed in something, but I didn't know what, into my
Yeah,
late
yeah.
20s and early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in a relationship with a man who was like a convert, like went from Christian to atheism. And so for anybody else who's experienced that in any relationship, it often is like a hard right turn, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
really Christian to like super, super, super atheist. When we die, we're dust. There's nothing else. Only
Right.
empirical evidence exists.
Yeah.
And I started to connect with my intuition in my career as a midwife,
Mm.
but it was a hard one to trust in that sphere because there was a lot of there's a lot of legal things that come up. The medical legal system is
Yeah.
really scary, actually, and so it's really hard to lean into the trust that you can have or build as a care provider in that space. But in my later years, in the last couple of years of my practice, I really started to pay attention to and trust when I'd hear my intuition alarm bells ringing. I couldn't always act on them immediately, but it was a lovely sense of when my alarm bells went off, there was always something more empirical that allowed me to encourage a certain course of care. For instance, like being at a home birth where I was like, I don't know why I'm not comfortable. Nothing on the surface should make me uncomfortable here, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm uncomfortable. And then pretty much always, if I was feeling that way, there was a reason that we went into the hospital, and my intuition was correct. And so as I started to lean more into the journey into spirituality itself, which only happened after I left that relationship. It was like a relearning how to listen to my intuition in other areas of my life for me, because I'd never really practiced it. I'm very logical. I've always been a very logical, like rational, scientific brain. And so even when I embarked into my wild medicine energy healing program, the very first intensive weekend, I remember dropping into to be walked through doing my very first energy healing, and in my head I was like, I'm making shit up. This isn't real. Like, I don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And yet it's like it found me. There was so many little moments of proof, for lack of a better term, that just allowed me to build up trust. And the more I trust and the more I listen, the easier it is to hear, and the more grounded I am in my connection with spirit and my connection with my intuition.
Yeah. And so, like, it took me, I'm just thinking of myself personally. So would you say that our innate wisdom is the same as our intuition, or is it different?
No, I think that's another term for it. Yeah. It's that subconscious knowing that lives in our bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I hope, I can't say for sure, I don't know this, but I hope that we all get there at some point in this life. We probably don't. That's why we have, a million lives, but, and we all get there in different ways. My journey to that was through a psilocybin. It was through a plant medicine ceremony with a really wonderful medicine holder. And up until that point, I was incredibly judgmental of that kind of extracurricular. But I was totally ignorant to it, didn't understand the history of it, didn't understand it as an intelligence. But that was my doorway in. And it sounds like your doorway in was, like, could we even say it was your midwife career? Or was there snippets before that, do you think?
I think that, there were snippets in that I was always curious and interested in things like astrology, or things like, the woo side of life was always curious to me, but I never could admit, even to myself, that I might possibly believe it.
Right.
I kind of was like, this is fun, this is harmless, but it's like my same thoughts at the time around like homeopathics. I was like, they're just pseudoscience, but whatever. They're not going to harm anything.
Right.
And yeah, I think that the midwifery career, there's something so magical about that space between life and death in that birth room. It's such a potent time. It's really hard not to drop into your intuitive knowing. There's something so connected to spirit or source there. And I wouldn't have had any of these words when I was actually working as a midwife, like the term sacred to describe a birthing room. I was using that term just the other day, and I was like, there's no way I would have used that word, because to me that would be almost like religious triggering,
right,
back when I was still practicing. But it's definitely was the doorway. And leaving my partner, actually, the combo. I think I bought my first tarot deck the week I left him, the week I moved into my house on my own. And I was like, I'm gonna buy a tarot deck, I'm gonna sign up for this astrology app. I'm like,
floodgates open.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was there. There are threads when I look back, but certainly it was the kind of that combination of walking that space already, that liminal sacred space, learning how my intuition really spoke to me and that I could trust it in that space, and then also removing the barrier that was my incredibly critical and judgmental ex.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. It's funny, you talk about the birthing room, and I couldn't think of another word to describe it other than sacred. Like, that moment is the most precious moment in both the one being birthed and the one birthing. Like, that is a wild, precious moment.
It really is. If I miss any one thing about, I miss a lot of the things about that career, but the moment where a baby's crowning and my fingertips are on their head is
Oh my
just like,
gosh.
that's a sensation that will live
Oh.
forever in my hands and that I miss a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And like, what a witchy thing to do. It's funny, as I'm thinking this, I'm thinking about, we both have a mutual friend who's a doctor and has delivered many babies, but whether they want to admit it or not, if a doctor's birthing, delivering the baby, that was like one of the OG witch jobs.
I know. That was the other thing. I was like, well, I guess calling myself a witch, I was a midwife. They are the
Yeah, that's
original
about as
witches.
witchy. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, they were all persecuted for their knowledge and their
Yes.
power they held in the community and the place of respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating. Okay, another thing that on the word fascinating, I think it's like one of your favorite things in the world, and I know very little about it, but can you share with me what the Wheel of the Year is and how
Yeah.
you work with it?
Yes, I'd be delighted to. So,
Yay.
I mean, at its most simple, it's a calendar. It's actually an agricultural calendar originally from Europe. I particularly lean into the Celtic history
Mhm.
in the Wheel of the Year, but it's also a calendar that's been adopted by modern day pagans and Wiccans. And I
Okay.
should clarify too, I'm not a Wiccan. I don't follow the Wiccan religion. I don't know anything about it really. So I get asked, I'm like, no, it's not me. So you can be a witch without being a Wiccan.
Okay.
And the Wheel of the Year is, again, it's an agricultural calendar that just marks the turning of the seasons. And so there are 8 celebrations in the
Mhm.
wheel. 4 of them are the solstices and the equinoxes, and then the other 4 are kind of the pretty much midway points in between, which in the Celtic calendar mark the beginning of the seasons. And it's interesting, when I was learning about it, I was like, oh, that's why midsummer is called midsummer, even though that's the summer solstice. And for those of us in North America, that's the first day of summer, not the middle of summer. But
Right.
in that old agrarian calendar, it was actually the high point or the midway point of summer, because
Okay.
summer starts back on May 1st.
Okay.
And it was kind of it was the first part of my offerings that leaned more into the woo. I stayed in my quote unquote coaching lane for the first
Mhm.
little while, but I was really called to start holding ceremony to celebrate and mark these shifts in the energy in the Wheel of the Year. And the more that I've learned about it and moved with it, the more it makes sense to me that I found this rhythm of living, because I talk so much and teach so much about rest and the need for rest. And the Celtic calendar, the Wheel of the Year, begins with winter. So October 31st is the new year in that calendar, and the days in the Celtic world begin at dusk, at sundown. So we begin with
Whoa.
rest. We
Okay.
begin in the dark. And I can hear that sigh in your body
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
you contemplate that. And it was just
Mhm.
this deep permission to rest.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's like our society is in this constant spring, summer, spring, summer. That's what capitalism
Right.
pushes, is plant harvest, plant harvest, plant harvest.
Ugh.
And just like a field that you're doing that to, you have to dump chemical fertilizer on it, and eventually it's just the soil is going to be done. You're going to turn it into a desert.
Yeah.
The same is true of our bodies, of ourselves. We cannot be in perpetual plant harvest. We need the autumn to let things
Mhm.
fall, to reassess, to shed what's no longer serving, and then that
Mhm.
beautiful deep dark rest of winter to compost those things so that there's fertile soil for the next year.
Yeah, that feels so true in my little body right now. Just that permission to rest first thing in the morning. So people talk about, I've said it before, I've said it to others, I've said it to myself. I'm just in a season. Like I'm just going through a season. And so with the visuals of what that would be, a spring, a summer, an autumn, a winter, we all know we can envision what like the earth looks like, what our community looks like during those seasons. Can we as humans be in those seasons and those cycles kind of like at any time in the year, or are we really connected specifically to those like natural seasons? Like, could I be in a personal winter in the spring?
You definitely could be. I think there is still a connection to the overall energies of the earth. They impact us, but a perfect example is grief, which
Yeah.
is a form of winter.
Yeah.
Usually, there's often a bit of an autumn and winter, and you might move from a winter to a spring back to a winter if you're walking something like grief, but that can show up at any time of year. And so, yeah, there's definitely those smaller personal cycles as well that we live through the year. If we have businesses, they can be in a different season than the actual outside season. If we're in menstruating bodies, we have our hormonal cycle that's like a mini mirror of the seasons. And then no matter what kind of body you're in, we have those lunar cycles, the moon cycles again, that mirror the same energies. And I think it's just like, I often would say, depending on where your menstrual cycle lies, if you're a woman, you might be bleeding with a full moon. And when we're bleeding, it's a low energy winter time. It's a time to rest, but then you've got these big, bright, buzzy full moon energies. And
Right.
so some people find that jarring, and some people find that it actually balances them out a bit, and it makes it easier to ride this low energy because they've got a bit of a boost from the moon. And I think the same is true when we're in the bigger seasonal cycles of the planet and experiencing different things. Grief, at least in the summer, you've got the daylight to help give you that boost of serotonin. And so it might be a little bit easier to feel better through your grief or to have more moments of levity. And I think there's nothing wrong with having those seasons match up with the outside seasons and having the calm, quiet, dark of winter to grieve too.
Have you always lived your life according to like I'll say a version of this? Because maybe you didn't, maybe you weren't fully aware of the wheel of the year, but have you always kind of allowed yourself these spaces of wintering?
Not even close.
Okay. That makes me feel better.
No, not even close. And even still, I struggle. I think, I was very much, I'm an overachiever, a perfectionist. I've dealt with I'm still dealing with my people-pleasing tendencies. I'm a recovering people pleaser, as so many of us are. And I just would beat myself up when I couldn't keep performing to the same level of energetic output at different times of the year. I had no concept of the impact those energies had on me. And it's really interesting because I've traveled quite a bit in my life. And the last time I went to the southern hemisphere before embarking on this journey, in December or January, I was there. It didn't bother me in the least. I was just like, yes, it's summer. It feels great. All is well. It's hot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then recently I was in Argentina for the first few months of this year, which was wonderful. And I found it so jarring because my body was getting ready for spring and I suddenly dumped it in a place that was getting ready for autumn. And it was incredible with my newfound sense of being tuned in, how disruptive that actually was for my system.
And so I'm going to use your word rest and the importance of it. And I speak about how we move so fast in this life, we miss a lot of the information that we are supposed to be receiving. And that seems like a perfect example of it is before there's that awareness, before you're fully attuned with these parts of yourself, take, let's say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you would have just like ridden the energy and, gone with the flow and I don't know, stayed up dancing till the wee hours of the night. And now as a, wise woman, you're able to tune in because you are allowing yourself that rest. You're allowing yourself the moments of slow to actually be aware of the subtleties, which I very much believe that that's the magic in life, is being attuned to those subtleties and the information.
Yeah.
But we, and it makes sense that not a lot, but we're still wanting the millions of the masses to find this, to land here. But we live in such a fast-paced, pressurized society that people don't feel like it's like they can slow down. And I've heard you use the word like worthiness around it. Like, do you even feel worthy of resting? Like, how do we, I don't know if there's an answer to this, but like, how do we change? How do we change that narrative? How do we fix this?
Yeah. It's, I mean, not quickly or easily, but with practice. And I think you really like spoke to it, this cultivation of awareness and of presence, and really intentionally choosing to step out of that constant push forward. For me, it's been really helpful to, look at what I actually want and desire and need in this world, because that's an easy way to start to distance yourself from the hustle and the productivity is your worthiness piece, is to remember that the only reason that we equate our worthiness with productivity, and therefore we are not worthy enough to rest because we haven't done enough, is because that's what capitalism requires of us to function. It requires us to continually produce more and consume more in order to keep that forward linear upward progress, which is really not progress at all, because everything about life is cyclical, except for this like imposed idea of only more and faster is progress. So yeah, it's a conscious decision, and it's a constant reminding and remembering that we are not apart from nature. That's been a really helpful piece for me to come back to over and over. Remembering that the dichotomy between human and the rest of the world was created by some old white dudes, as so much is, like Aristotle, and like the Western philosophical traditions that we have really are where this divorce comes from between humans and the natural world. And so the wisdom and the healing power of just reconnecting with the land and remembering that we are like part of nature. We are as natural of beings as, the mouse that lives in your basement, and the coyote in the field, and all of nature is one, really, and we're part of that one.
I couldn't agree more. And so I used to work with doTERRA essential oils, and I still use them, but I don't sell them anymore. And it's funny. It's like I had so much information in my brain when I was really working intensely with that company. And as soon as I stopped, it's like I've lost the information. But there was this one piece of information, and you might know this based on your witchy wisdom. But when you take a plant, like a chemical constituent of a plant, makeup, and a human, it's something like there's like a 7% difference. And other than that, we're like made up of the same, like we're almost a plant. Like it's something wild where I'm going to fudge it. And maybe if anyone listening who works with doTERRA can clear this up for me, that would be amazing. But I remember just being so, like, it made so much sense. I was like, oh, of course, that's why, plant medicines know how to work in the body. Of course, that's why the original, pharmaceuticals were plants. They were herbs and flowers and trees and barks. And it's just a really sweet reminder that, we really, really are, to sit with a tree. We share the oxygen with it.
Yeah.
Like
we're part of that symbiotic relationship. I think often, we see ourselves as just like a virus on the face of the earth, because we do cause a lot of harm. But then there's also these really sweet remembrances that we weren't always that way. We did once know how to live in that relationship and harmony. The book Braiding Sweetgrass always comes to mind when she speaks about how the sweetgrass can't live without the indigenous folks who tend it. Because it chokes itself out. It needs to be harvested carefully and intentionally by people who know how in order for it to thrive. And so I actually get chills as I talk about that book. Made me bawl at every chapter. I just wept.
Me too. Yeah.
But that deep wisdom, down to the knowledge we have that almost always the antidote grows near the poison. For instance, if there's something harmful in nature, the antidote will be found nearby.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. It comes back to that, like we're so supported. We're actually so supported. And you almost like can't take a wrong step. Yeah. You will be redirected. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's reminding me of a book. I'm reading it I'm listening to it on audio right now. And I had her on the podcast a little while ago. You'll love this if you haven't already picked this book up, but Mia Magic wrote a book called Intuition.
Right. I haven't picked it up yet, but I know of it.
It's so great. So I have the audio and her and I have a mutual friend, and that mutual friend came over last week and she brought me the actual paperback. I'm grabbing it to show you, but I know my camera's not working. It's this beautiful turquoise book with a snake and a coyote and crystals, and everything's gold and turquoise, and it's stunning. And but it talks a lot about that, like that oneness and our relationship to this beautiful planet. And people nowadays are so afraid of dirt and the rain and the bugs and all of these things. And it's like our ancestors, like our ancestors were rolling in the mud and talking to the beetles and praying with the snakes and singing with the birds. Like we come from this. We come from it. We are not different then.
Not different then. And that disconnect, I love that you speak to that we're scared of the dirt, or we buy our food in styrofoam packages in this fluorescent lit store. And the disconnect we have from the way that our nourishment even comes to us, and the fact that the ancestors live in the land, and the animals are the ancestors, and the plants that you eat are of the ancestors because they've been nourished by those who've died and given their nutrients back to the land. And that sad, no other word than disconnect, that false binary between us and the earth that we are a part of is a big piece of the disease that we are, like, dis-ease that we are experiencing culturally and collectively.
Yeah. Like coming back to that word reclamation, and I see it in little pockets where there are a lot of humans really trying to reclaim this connection. And I mean, our we don't need to go into it, but our government makes it hard to do that. Harder and harder to do that. Yeah.
Again, for the powers that be to stay in control, they can't have us reclaiming that knowledge and wisdom and innate power.
All the more reason to do it.
Exactly.
All the more reason to do it. Cam and I were walking the other day, and we're having a really big conversation about, like, where's the world? I mean, it wasn't a joyful conversation. It was intense, but like, where's the world going? What's happening to society with all of this tech and AI and robots and like all of this stuff and cell towers? And we were talking about our connection to nature. And it's like, take a look around. Like, Mother Nature is a strong ass bitch, and she is dying. And if she is dying, we are not far behind, because she is so much stronger than we are. And if she's starting to go, like, we have to be looking at that. And I know that there's millions of people. Exactly.
Yeah. If she goes, we have nothing to sustain us.
No.
Yeah.
Can we switch the vibe a little bit? I'm like,
please.
We're going to be coming towards the end, and I don't want to leave on a downer note. I would love to know, and I know that people listening would also love to know what you have coming up and what you're excited about and all of that beautiful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love the timing of when this is being released because
Mhm.
it lines up perfectly. I'm going to be jumping into a lead up to Unleash Your Inner Witch, which is a 6-week
Yes.
class in light witchcraft for the woo curious. So,
Yay.
yeah, it came about as like a way to dabble your toe in some of the mystery and the magic and the tools and ways to re-enchant your life. There's
Oh,
definitely a whole module around the cyclical living piece, but we dip our toes into tarot and crystals and all sorts. It's a pretty packed full of juiciness
oh
and
my gosh.
that how to bring witchcraft into your life in a way that's not daunting. Because when I found
Hmm.
myself starting to think about what does it mean to be a witch, you
Hmm.
can buy lots of books and they have spells with very rigorous steps and like the ways you're supposed to do things. And I was like, I am way too lazy for any of that, and that feels really
Totally.
overwhelming. So it's really, I guess, in a lot of ways, it's a course in intuition as well and developing
Yeah.
relationship with land.
Yeah.
So
Great.
that'll be coming up in September. We begin, and the wait list is open,
Yeah.
so you can hop on there.
Good.
And yeah, as we record this, I'm still brewing up, but I think I'll be launching a new way to work with me come the end of October, which will be
Oh,
a little bit of the one-on-one support, but also a little more like mentorship and teaching. And it'll be
yes.
probably hybrid group and one-on-one around how do we find that courage to rest? How do we
Mhm.
connect with our bodies, our intuition? And then how do we ripple that out into the world? How do we hold that space for others as well and pass that teaching on?
This sounds so good. As you said the word lazy, I had an idea, and well, it's not a full idea; it's a half baked idea. But I wonder if you could also create something that's like the Lazy Witch's Guide, or like
Yeah.
something Lazy Witch 101, how to start your journey as a witch who
Yeah.
doesn't wear a hat, or something kind of cute and playful.
Oh,
I
I
own a
love that.
cauldron. That's one thing. So I'm a witch as
Nice.
well. Whole bunch,
You are
yeah.
definitely a witch. There's
I am.
no
I
question
am.
about it. There's like
I
that's
definitely
yeah.
am. I
I don't
definitely
even
am.
own a cauldron.
Oh, I had it. I had someone in my life a few years ago who was a ceramic artist, and it's a custom made. It's really quite
Oh,
beautiful. It's really
beautiful.
really cool. I'll show it
Very
to you
oh,
next
I
time
should.
you're around.
Yeah. Please do.
hmm I will. Okay, so all
Yeah.
of your links are going to be dropped below. Is there anything kind of on your heart that we maybe didn't cover that you are feeling inspired to share, or just anything
Mm.
else?
Mm. I think that the reminder as you start to engage with this kind of work, however it is that you go about doing that, is to be, and I know that you probably remind your listeners of this all the time, but to be so tender and gentle with yourself,
Mm.
because it's so easy to fall back into the patterns and the habits and the hustle. Like I do it all the time. That's why I teach this, so that I can be in it constantly.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and my little catchphrase that I often use, which is to let yourself be right.
Oh, I love that. I've never heard you say that.
Really? I guess I should say it more. I've been thinking
Say
about
it
putting
all
it
the
on a sweater.
time. Yeah. Heck yeah. A little crop top, little hoodie,
Yeah.
little water
Yeah.
bottle, little satchel. That's a good
All the
one.
things.
Oh,
Yeah.
let yourself be right. Okay.
Yeah. We
Thank
make
you for that.
ourselves wrong so often. We get in our heads,
Oh, yeah.
we analyze our way into how we're wrong, and I think that let yourself be right just speaks to that. Your intuition knows, let
Oh,
yourself
I
know.
love this. I love this. I love this. Okay. I'm going to bring that into breath journeys, and I'll make sure that people know where it came from. But that feels like a very important statement.
Yeah, please
I
share
will.
it
Oh,
far and
thank
wide.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Yay. Okay.
Yay.
Beautiful. Where do people find you? What's the easiest, most active place?
Yeah. So I love writing to my email list. So if you like receiving love notes in your email inbox, if you head to my website, which is myluminouslife.ca, you're going to get a fun pop-up asking if you'd like to take a quiz to find out which witch you are.
Oh,
And based
yes.
on your outcome, it'll tell you also what kind of rest your body is craving.
Oh.
So that ties right into my work. And then if you like to hang out on Instagram, I am Eileen March at I am Eileen March
Okay.
on Instagram, and that's my most active social platform. Though I just started a LinkedIn, so you can find me over there too. It's just Eileen March.
Okay, beautiful. I haven't dabbled in LinkedIn yet. I have an account. I haven't done anything with it. So I'll ask you outside of here all about that journey.
Yeah, I have a bio and no posts yet, but I'm there.
Okay, that's the same as me. I have a bio. Yeah, and there's probably a photo or something.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this was so lovely. I really hope my video ends up working.
Me too.
And celebrating the computer didn't explode. And as soon as we hop off this, I'm going to order a new laptop.
Yes, do that. Do it.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Yeah. Thank you so much, my sweet friend.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a lovely, lovely conversation to have.
Yeah, it was. All right, beauties, thank you so much for listening. If you feel to reach out to either myself or Eileen, please do that on the Instagram. Links are, of course, in the show notes. And if you haven't already yet, please rate and or review the podcast. It really helps us reach more amazing humans like you. And of course, you can subscribe so that you just don't miss a single thing. Now, if you've been following along, you know that I have closed down the registration to the Essentials, which is my breathwork and somatic membership. Now, these doors will open again, but I'm not quite sure when. So in the meantime, because I am a Manny Gen, those of us that know human design know it's hard for people like us, manifesting generators, to not create. It's like impossible. So I've created this super fun somatic toolkit that I have deemed the toolkit built for a queen. This is a virtual resource for all of you, for all of us, to really support women who are seeking to navigate life's challenges with grace, with strength, with a sense of self-awareness, with a sense of groundedness. The toolkit's designed to empower you and to support you in letting go of trapped emotions, releasing the stuff that gets in the way of us fully embodying our radiant, powerful, queen-like self. So inside you are going to have access to breathwork practices, somatic tools, mindset and emotional growth practices, embodiment practices, all the stuff that I know to be like a must, a must in this life. And the links for that, of course, are in the show notes. What you'll also see in the show notes is a link to Breathe with Me. And this is a 5-day free breathwork experience. So if you and I have not breathed together, if you've not worked in my space, this might be a really sweet place for you to begin. It's free. Links are down there. I will see you next time. Lots of love.